The second kind of area of evolution of out-of-band we've been experiencing is embedded cellular. So we've embedded cellular now for about 5-6 years, I think. We started with 3G, we've gone to 4G, LTE. We're working towards LTE and X. But more importantly, there's a whole host of software settings and features behind the embedded cellular, because it's really the most important takeaway is that it's not an on-off thing. You can't plug in an external USB dongle and say, there you go, there's your IP address. Well, what do you do with that? How do you control it? How do you adapt to it? Because what we've learned in 6 years is cell plans vary widely by region, by country, and by carrier. So in Europe, you're primarily going to get a private NAT address. And that's the same address you get with your cell phone. My cell phone's over there, but that's this kind of private NAT address you'll get in Europe. The difficulty there is it's outbound only. How do I get to it? Then if you're in the United States and you go to Verizon or AT&T or other carriers and you get a business plan, they're going to give you either a public static that sits on the internet, which is great and easy to use and access, or they're going to give you a private carrier network where you're going to take all of your cellular devices and they tuck them inside a private network and then you IPsec into that. So the advantage with that is it's all isolated, it's all tucked in there. The problem is if you're traveling around, you got to get back into the core to get into all of your cellular devices. So we find that there's no one-size-fits-all, unfortunately, but the good news is we've got adaptive security and access and alerting to kind of address all of those different scenarios.
And again, you say embedded cellular, you've got a chipset inside the box as opposed to a USB modem. You can't get this done with a modem.
Correct. Yeah.
Just articulate that, because you just can't get into that USB stick and get the control that you do with the embedded chip.
That's actually an excellent point. The USB dongle is providing an IP address. You could probably, we started that way with USB dongles and then we went embedded. So if you plugged in an external into us, we might be able to control it because we already have that existing software framework. But a lot of the solutions, when you plug in the USB dongle, it's just an additional Linux Ethernet. It appears as WWAN 0, and they have to treat it the same way they treat anything. And you would never treat your Ethernet 0 port the same way you treat your WWAN 0 port. And how do you control that USB on and off? How do you know you can reliably turn it off when you don't need it and then turn it on and have that USB be there for you? So that's a great question, yeah.
So are you working with these carriers to kind of keep up with standards? Because traditionally we've had issues where we've had the USB dongles and Verizon would change something and then we'd have to ship out a new dongle or something like that. So
yeah.
Are you guys working with the carriers themselves?
Yeah, it's a huge undertaking, and we've actually hired people whose only job is to work on certification, and they work particularly on integrating all of the devices. At any one time, we're evaluating a number of cell modems, and because in the cell world, the rate of change is ridiculous for someone from out-of-band world. People will put in, I've sold devices and I'll go back 10 years later and it's in that rack and it's still working. Typically a life cycle on an out-of-band solution can be 5 to 7 years. So the world changes around them a little bit. Things will come in and out, like servers are what, 3 to 5? Right. In the cell world, it's like 2 years.
So are you using like an embedded mini PCI type card that can be changed, or are something else?
Yeah, we're using, for the most part, we're using a CRM module inside the device, and it's a connection into a motherboard for us.
So you've got full control to be able to do things like SMS alerting and all those other types of control gear direct to that card now.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. So if you look at what we're doing, I'll show you here in a second. That's exactly right, and I'll show you in the demo here if we get time. So we're doing pretty good on time, and I did want to show you that because that's a huge component. There's 2 threats. And this is another aspect to it. It's all about security. They're going to be scared. If you talk to the network admin, they're going to treat cellular a lot like their smartphone, and it's not. We do a lot of education, but the 2 threats that they need to address are unwanted attention. I'm getting friend requests all the time from other countries trying to come and say hello to my cell modem. And the other part is usage, and anybody who's got a family plan knows that that's a problem. And so we have to have ability to address these 2 threats across all of this different variety. And so the tools that we use to do that are, number one, the embedded cellular modem. So it's not a dongle that can come out and fall off. It's not something you have to worry about. It's not something you have to develop support and drivers for. We have framework for upgrading the firmware on the device. You can go into our device and say, check for new firmware for Verizon. And it'll say it's available, and it will download and upgrade that modem. If you don't upgrade your modem firmware for 2 years, there's threats there, and so you need to keep that updated. Let's see. The other part is, hey, I've got a cell modem inside here. I'm going to add texting to the plan. There's a network outage. How am I going to get to this thing? How am I going to know? It can't get to my email or my SNMP. How's it going to alert me? Well, we have SMS. We can go in and say, use SMS for alerting, and then we can create any kind of auto response that says, if this condition becomes true, text me. And I'll show you this in a second. But this is a big one, primarily because everybody's got a smartphone.
Can we send commands to the device over SMS?
You can.
Cool.
Yeah. And we'll do that today.
I thought at one point you were looking at doing some diversity with carriers too, being able to have 2 different carriers for the same box.
Yeah, we do. That was an innovation we just created this year. We call it dual carrier. It just means the modem can support, for instance, AT&T and Verizon.
Does it have any intelligence to know if maybe you're out of minutes on one plan to switch over to the other? Is that...
There's failover. We don't fail over between carriers. We made a conscious decision not to do that because if you automate it, you can do it, but it can run, it can go sideways. So what we do is we have plan failover, so we could do that. So we have a SIM 1 and a SIM 2, and we can say if this condition becomes true, typically what they'll do is they might disconnect you, but not because of cell usage. They're happy to let you run over. No offense, AT&T and Verizon, I love you, but we can fail over between the SIMs.
We get fine modem control for like areas where you have poor coverage, and maybe I want to lock it into 2G or 3G mode, or to prevent it from like trying to get on LTE all the time, those types of things?
Yeah, and that's a classic example of leveraging our ability to be extensible. You can see here's a cell CTL. We can actually go in and dialogue with the modem. We can issue AT commands, and it's a big question. Some customers want it locked, and some customers don't want it locked. And so we go back and forth, but you do have the ability to set that through AT commands, for instance. So these are good questions. And we could spend 2 hours going over the innovations. When I started the presentation, I went back and looked at everything we did since we embedded 3G, and we had like over 20 major innovations in just LTE. And I'm just kind of starting in 2015 to 16. So there is a lot there.
With the embedded modem, are you exposing the time from the carrier to be used to sync with NTP? The NTP daemon that can run on the box?
And again, a great question. We get it from customers. We're doing a USB connection, and there's Stratus or Stratum 1, 2, and 3. We just don't fall, but there's just enough that we would not be comfortable telling our customers that we can be that NTP.
So the USB chipset doesn't have 1PP support?
It's there. It's there, but our ability to get it to you in the time would be a Stratum 2-ish or 3-ish. We couldn't call it a 2 or a 3. They want, I forget the exact number, but if you were to say, Opengear, you are my NTP server because you're getting it from the cell, we couldn't reliably say it's that accurate for you to bank all of your remote syslogging on it.
Right.
We would have to embed the cellular modem on the board.
Well, you can do it through USB, but the USB chipset has to support 1PP.
Okay.
Eric S. Raymond actually has a good list of what chipsets actually support that.
Yeah. The other difficulty we face is customers, this has got to be certified to run in Verizon and AT&T. And anytime we change a modem, we have to go back to the certification labs, and we've got that cost. Okay, so the final tool here, besides the embedded cell and the SMS texting, is we can control that modem when and where it's on. So I can control it through various means, but I can also tie it to our auto response. So we have this mechanism that says, hey, if this thing happens, do this. And one of the things we can say is, if you see this event occur, turn the modem off, turn it on. So we can text it to wake it up. We can watch a ping address and wake it up. And that addresses those customers who say, I've got a public static plan because I need to get to it from the park on Sunday. But I don't want anybody else to try until there's an outage. Why should it be on? Because here's what happens. If some other country comes in and tries to ping the device and scan it and log in, that's a packet AT&T and Verizon are going to charge you for. You denied it, but it came into you, and so if you left it open and you left it on there, and this is common, people do this, they know it, it's part of the world of LTE, public static IP, you're going to be denying all the time that device is up and running. So let me look, for instance, let me look at mine here. Let's do cat var log messages here, and let's see if anybody's been sending me friend requests. Yeah, right there. So this address 177, who can type a who is for 177, 177, 145, 128? So this is my filtered blocking them.
JP.
It's 177.177.145.128.
Probably Hollingsworth.
Where are they from? Who's requesting do I have a new Facebook friend?
Telemar Norte Lesta SA.
I'm going to deny that friend request.
Yeah, somewhere out of the country, don't know.
So this happens. So I've had this up since 12:30 in here. And this has been going on. So you can see other people. If I did a tail, you'd see this going on. And so we have all sorts of stuff. You can leave this up and running, and we're going to do brute force protection. If that friend tries 3-4 times, I'm going to put them on a list and say, I'm not going to respond to them at all. If they're a bot, they're going to think something happened, somebody turned it off, I better go somewhere else. And so we've spent a lot of time figuring out how to make this secure for the customers. And then the customer comes and say, okay, we switched over, we're private carrier network now. The whole model changes, so we have to change for that. I can also go in here and say send SMS. So who's got a Verizon? I can do non-Verizon phone. Who wants to volunteer?
That's going to be published.
Oh,
No one wants.
you're right.
No, you can use mine actually. Yeah.
You don't have to tell it to me. I'll just tell. Oh yeah, I don't know. What? What's that? We'll fuzz it out here.
No, it's okay. This number is safe. No, this number is actually safe to give out because it dies in 2 days anyway.
Okay.
6.
Is it Verizon or AT&T?
No, it's actually Canadian. So
We'll try it.
I'll
do a one.
Actually, it's a T-Mobile number, I think.
Okay, I'll do one.
872-707-3664. Let the spam begin.
You know what? Hold on a second.
Oh, nah.
Hold on. I got my twos and text mixed up. But I got copy and paste.
So I guess you guys receive a fair bit of SMS spam that just ends up in the log over time as well.
We can, that's a good question.
I see it on other platforms.
Yeah, so I'm going to send SMS. I'm going to say hello, and we'll try. We'll see if this works from my Verizon to you. Should take a second. Anything?
Not yet.
You got it?
Not yet.
Okay, not yet.
It's Canadian. It may not work anyway.
It may take it. It's getting up there. So I'll do one. I'll do a send SMS to me. I'll say hello, and I'll put in. Oh, I don't know if I want to put my phone number. Although it's good to have people call me.
You're a sales guy.
Dim the game here for a second. We'll talk.
Okay, we're taking
Yeah.
the screen off. Go ahead and just don't yell
Okay.
out loud.
Okay. All right, now I'm listening here. So in a little bit, you can hear it, but I got a text. So now I can come in here. Let me do a tail -f var log messages. I'll stretch it out a little. We're making it big so people from home can actually see.
Can we show that? Or does it
Yeah, you can show this. Yeah, it's fine. Maybe I have to change my number after 20 years, but you guys are worth it. So now I got a message. It said hello. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to type hello. I don't know if there's a camera, but I'm going to type hello back to my device. And what we should see here in a second is an incoming text. I am doing a demo live in front of lots of people. Oh, is that it? Did something happen while I looked away for a second? I have an auto response set up that if it receives that text, it will respond back to me with the text. So I can say hello, and it'll say right back at you. There it is, yeah. Oh, not yet. This always happens on public demos.
So I'm assuming you can set a list of, except like a white list of numbers. These are the numbers you should listen to. These are the ones you shouldn't listen to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, let me show you how I set that up.
Cool. That's a good point too. I mean, if you're going to block, hellos, I mean, how long does that last? Is that permanent? You time those out after a while?
If someone had your number, how would I prevent cell spamming? That's a great question for Marcio, and worth developing. Put that on the list, Marcio. I think that's so far it hasn't, out of all of our installs over the last 6 years, it hasn't come up. People, they've asked it 3 times, and I've heard it twice now from this group and once from a customer in the last 2.5 years. So it hasn't. It's a great question though, because maybe you get texts a lot and it uses up your texting.
Yeah, we have had customers get spammed, or LTE routers get spammed with SMS messages, and it turned out that there wasn't any plan support for it, and they got a bill, didn't realize it. So
yeah, so
I think it's rare, but
it's worth addressing. I don't think it would be that monumental. The problem is some of that's going to occur at the cell level and would have to be controlled at the cell portal. So customers get self-service portals if they've got large deployments, and that's just my dashboard refreshing. And they actually might be able to go in there and control that, and that might be even more appropriate than having us do it. Because we're just receiving them. We couldn't block it. Someone could keep sending them. I don't know if they get charged if it gets sent and not received. This is our dashboard. This is showing our connection status. I don't have any kind of failover right now. I'm just a public-facing IP. And down here is this new interface. So this is ETH0, ETH1, and here's this new one for our network engineer friends, WWAN 0. And they can have this out on the internet, like mine. And then they could also have it in a private carrier network of their own. And so the beauty of that is it's a 20 meg to 100 meg, depending on where you are and what the congestion is, instant on management network. I can put a SIM card in an Opengear device, activate the cellular modem, it's now on my management network. I can send it anywhere I want, it's still on my management network, and it's isolated. And customers are now beginning to say, hey, this is actually pretty big. But to show you the SMS component, since I can come in here if I wanted to look under our alerting and logging. Classic out of band SNMP, but now I've got SMTP and SMS. So I can go in; it's all hashed out. I can send emails for alerting, but more importantly now, I can say, look, use the internal cell modem for alerting. So if I go into my auto response system, I can say, let's do cell usage check as an example. Or here's a right back at you. It's going to show my phone number. But if I go into cell usage check, what we can say is, watch internal cell modem for this amount of data over that amount of time, and then if it happens, go ahead and send an email. But I could just as easily have said, send an SMS. I'd say who it is and what to send them. And so we have this whole framework of auto response. And so I can say if these events become true, other things I can do is down here, perform an interface action. And that's one of the ways to do failover. We call it out-of-band failover. It just means the modem is not there to hack into, to try it, to use up. It's just not available until somebody actually needs it. And so we can control that at an IP level by trying to ping an address out ETH0, or we can come in here and say, ping's not going to be my test. One of those things is going to be my test. And so what happens is, I'll show you, if I go in here to the IP interface, and I go in, and I say, you know what, I do not want that on. And so what I'm going to say is, as long as I can ping 1.6 right now, and here, that's my laptop, it's going to turn off the cell modem. So let's do that. And I'll show you this in a second, this dormant setting, because there are people who want it. They want it not the primary route. So what's happening here, 2 things. We're going to adjust the route table when it comes back on, and we're going to keep it off until it's needed. And the reason for that is we're a console server. We have Quagga built in. We can do BGP and OSPF, but we're typically not doing routing on our interfaces. So what we do is per interface routing. Packets come in, they go out, right? And so what about defaults? We have to handle default gateway. So typically ETH0 is the default gateway. But what if I'm in a failover mode in cell? I need to have a default gateway go out to cell. So what's going to happen is we're going to do two things. We're going to turn it off till it's needed, and when it does come up, the cell modem, WN0, is going to become the best metric. We're going to say ETH0 is 10, and WN0 is 0. So let me go ahead and apply this, and then I'll show you something else interesting. So let's get out of that. If I do this cell CTL -ISL, this is a way for us to query the modem. It's like AT commands, and it's going to talk to the modems. It's like a grep for the modem. Tell me what's going on with you. What's your status? What's your carrier? Now what should be seen here is what is your IP address. And now that's suddenly missing. The reason for that, if we go back to our dashboard and demo, please, don't be afraid of public demos. I have this connection now. It's in main, and it's non-connected. And the reason for that is I'm in failover mode, and he's pinging 1.9. I can go in and change that address, and what you're going to see is he'll start testing, and it'll fail over, and it'll bring up that modem.
So you don't have an IP address right now?
I don't.
Can you receive SMS though?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and that's what's great about this. I've got some slides of like the feature requests. There's like 16 of the dialogue, customer and engineering. Yes, can you do this? Can you do that? And so what they said is, great, I love failover. I love that you've done all this, but I want to get in there right now. How do I wake it up? I have to go do a shut on the Ethernet port. What do I do? So we created a script, and I'll show you that in a second. But yeah, you can. It's how you get your cake and eat it, because what's happening here, there's a whole connection manager in the background. It's got to manage all of this stuff. And so the engineers get it all worked out, and then someone says, I want you to be able to also do this. So
well, that's a security issue, right? I mean, it's an easier argument with a security guy to tell them, don't worry about it because it's down. Unless we turn it up,
yes,
it's down.
Yes.
So it's not an active connection.
I rarely get in the same room with the security guy, because when we send them the best practices, they review it and they say, okay, I'm good with it.
Good. Well, not to jump ahead, but now that I've had a failure,
yes,
how do I get into it?
Okay. So it's down and it fails over.
Right.
How do I get into it? So what's going to happen is, remember that 166 address? I have a public static with Verizon, and so I can SSH to that 166 address. So I typically get into ports by addressing SSH username : port name at IP address. That's Ethernet 0. I can, when it's in failover mode, as long as I can get to the internet, or I can get to my private network from the carrier, I can SSH to the cell address.
Okay, so it's not like a call home portal or something that this is going to reach back out to and say, here's your IP addresses if you need them.
There is. So we have So we have a central management piece called Lighthouse, and what happens is our units will actually call home. And that's part of why we changed that route. We need to tell call home, don't try to go back to don't call home to Lighthouse over Ethernet 0. You've got a failover situation. You need to now trigger and go out the cell modem. And that's the trigger, that failover, that route change tells it to do it. And so what happens is you can then go to you can go to Lighthouse and you can access it. The reason that's really important, and we did this originally, was people in Europe with that private NAT, when it fails over, now how do they get to it? So what it does is it fails over to the NAT, and then it does an outbound session, either SSH, or we have the ability to stack multiple connections. So I say bring up the interface, and then bring up an IPsec tunnel, and go back to Lighthouse or the gateway. And then now I can get to the device. So that was one of the reasons Lighthouse kind of did the whole call home practice. And it still works well for the cell, because I have three IP addresses for this device. It's 2 in the morning, I get a ticket. How do I get to it?
What about dynamic public? Can you send a message over SMS or something and say, here's what my IP is, or can I request it and say, hey, tell me what your IP is because I know you're public.
Yes.
Dynamic?
Yeah, so historically there was this, you could get a plan that was a public dynamic.
Yes.
And in Canada, that's the only kind of public plan you can get. And if that's changing, how do you know? So we have a DIE DNS support, but we also have...
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, so we also have, let me show you this, I have a slide of it here. We have since we're jumping around here, this is good. I can put in the ability, so part of the auto response is this really cool feature to do an executable script. So etcconfig is writable, and I can actually write to that. And so I can put in scripts there. This script does cell failover control, and it'll turn off the failover. That's how you wake it up. We also have ones that will come in here. He wants to do the IPsec tunnel. Can I have failover and the cell modem at the same time? Can I get an alert? And then can I test the cell connection? And so you remember I did cell CTL, and you can see that information. Well, we can grep all of that, and we can tie it to this. So we have not only a cell health check that checks RSSI and the fact that it's online because I don't have an IP. How do I health check that? So we check the RSSI and the cell online status. The other thing we can do is we have a check called cell IP. You text it, it takes your cell phone number, puts it back in the response, and sends you the cell IP. The other thing is, you remember on this auto response, we had the ability to do, interface events. So what I can stack are two things. When the cell modem comes up, go grab the cell IP and send it to me. So you don't even have to request it. And we do this a lot with managed service providers and others who are sending the boxes out on day one. What they do is they plug it in, they power it up, it comes up and it emails somebody or texts them, hey, I'm at this address. They get in, they turn up their network, and then they move on. So yeah, good question.
A lot of mobile carriers are kind of leading the charge with IPv6. Are you seeing any of the embedded cellular carriers handing out v6 addresses natively?
Are you a member of NANOG? Because that's all, they keep hitting us up on that too. We're IP6 ready to go, but the carrier's not. And the crazy thing is they're about 90% IPv6, Verizon is. It's just for some reason they're not handing out those types of addresses. But that is changing, and we're ready to go as soon as that becomes available. It's not us. We're IPv6. They're not handing us that address yet.
I mean, I see you have the link local addresses on the LAN interfaces, so you have full feature parity between v4 and v6.
Yeah.
So in other words, I mean, to tack onto that, right, if it's kind of something I always hit on too, is if you, by full feature functionality, if it's on a network, connected to a network, I turn off all v4 addresses. There is not a v4 network present. Everything would still work. You could manage it, you could log in, everything would work, it would talk, it would... So you know how
yes.
People dual stack, and you find that the v6 stuff is actually kind of piggybacking on some of the v4 stuff. You turn v4 off, that's when you notice,
us vendors in the out-of-band world are classic examples of saying, I might be v6, but the question is how much of out-of-band is IPv6? Is your GUI IPv6, but your SNMP is 4? Right. You know, what did you say? Parity? IPv6 parity, and that's what we're going for is full parity. We want you to be able to turn off IPv4 and not have a single out-of-band component turned off.
I'm not sure if you're going to touch on this, but what kind of antenna support do you have for the box? Do you have a bunch that you support or a bunch you provide?
Yeah, we have antennas that are included with the device, and the idea is to try to, if the signal's there and it's in the data center and it's okay, maybe you need to get on top of the rack so it's not a Faraday cage. We include those in the device with a 10-foot magnetic extension. But sometimes you got to get outside of the room, and so we don't care it ourselves, but we've got worked out examples where we send the customer the kit, and they can take it and run it 50 feet, and they can get a low-loss cable, and they went from -90, which is kind of a cutoff, down to -61. They're really excited about it. They were a very remote location, an unmanned location, and it was down in a valley. And they got outside with the directional cable, yeah.
Do you support any multi-factor authentication aside from SMS?
We support Radius, TACAX, and we have an RSA tie-in. But lately we've been getting a lot of two-factor. So we are welcoming all input on what two-factor means to customers, because I've got 3 requests in the last 4 months, but they're all for different two-factors. So,
Well, with it being Linux-based, working with some of the vendors like Duo Security, some of the more modern multi-factor authentication providers that are providing PAM modules for their product, getting that support to be able to support the module, considering it's not x86 based, may be a way to go for that route. You can tie in via Radius, but it's not always the best mechanism for doing that for the end users.
yeah, we're absolutely trying to figure that next step out, because again, people want it to be 2016. They want it to be secure in this world, not the old one.
So here's another question too, off that topic. Obviously, it's a Linux box, right? So you could do a lot of stuff with this anyway. But logging, I want to get logging of everything on the box. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. I want to get it to like a correlation engine, like a Splunk or something like that.
Yes.
So I could take the syslog and write custom code to dump it out somewhere.
Yes.
But do you guys have built-in functionality that accomplishes that without me having to hack on syslog or some other type of?
We've got some stuff we've done custom for customers, like an SNMP relay. So you put it out somewhere. It's the same concept, different technology. Traps come to us, and then we relay them. People are using us for tail-F to come in, and we're actually the pipeline. But they've said I would like you to be more intelligent. Again, I'm a serial over IP device. I'm doing console ports, but now you want me to parse data and then make it available, and that's where the RESTful APIs come in, and everyone's using RESTful APIs.
And we are doing basic pattern matching, so we can see all the incoming console messages and recognize patterns, and then be able to take automatic action. But we think that's one of the areas of growth in infrastructure management, is the ability to collect all the data, analyze it as big data, detect patterns, and then react automatically, or even predict when failure is going to happen. So this is one of the paths we are exploring into the future in out-of-band management.
And that brings me to the end of my slides, but not the end of the demo and the discussion. Hey! Oh well, that was the last slide. So the question now becomes, out-of-band innovation, where do we go next? And so, we've got Marcio, and as a company, we're very listening to our customers and developing. So we're trying to figure out what should this product be doing over the next couple of years, and where does it need to go? Because it's obviously evolving out-of-band and the requirement for it.
And today we believe it's, if you go today to the data center, it's about being able to manage, control, and act on specific devices in the data center. Moving forward, people are going to try to automate the management as an infrastructure. So it's going to be less about accessing each device, but being able to monitor the infrastructure and knowing when something is wrong, when something is out of the normal state. So that's where we are evolving the solutions at Opengear as well.
So you've got my contact information, so please feel free to reach out if you need copies of any of the materials or anything you saw, or any additional stuff. I can get you that. If you want to know more about the solution, see it in action, you come by the booth. I welcome any questions you've got on the technology or anything you've seen. I know some people have some SDN DevOps experience here, and some got some more classic CCIE experience, and I kind of feel like that was excellent, because that's kind of where we're going too. We've got that mix of those two things. Have you guys seen that happening, where it's not just that classic, I've got guys running around configuring routers? It's, there's more happening in that network group today. Is that something you're all seeing?
Most definitely.
Oh, yeah.
I think zero touch is big, because the costs of travel are significant now. So to be able to send smart hands,
Yeah.
or even less smart hands in the retail space, we see a lot of, the guy working in the store needs to be able to plug it in while the CCIE is back at the office. So
Yeah.
those types of zero touch features do matter.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in large automation too, as well.
I mean, even the data center, if you have to deploy 10,000 units of anything, having to connect a laptop to the back of every box is a pain. So a lot of the deployments we are doing in the large data centers, they happen with zero touch. provisioning. Yes, you can ship the device and they plug it in and it works. And there are several mechanisms to do that. You can use pen drives on USB. You can use zero-touch provisioning functionality, the HCP servers. And
Have you had any requests for DIN rail applications, like for IoT space and things like that? Because we see more and more, the IE series DIN rail mounted gear, and there's consoles inside these cabinets that weren't there before.
Most of our retail applications today are commercial, and that is, people are starting to experiment with true IoT. But today, when we talk IoT in the commercial environment, this is still things like point of sales, bigger things, not sensors that are spread everywhere. I think we are going to see more and more of those applications in the future, and then wireless technologies are going to become more important, but we are not seeing that yet in the commercial environment.
How open is the box? Do you have full root access to the Opengear? Like, do you have enough access to break it by accident?
You don't have enough access. The breakable components are typically not writable and changeable. Etsy config is an area where you can put scripts and some other modifications that are into USB, but we tend to isolate that to make that not happen. What we do is offer a customer development kit. So you can get that, open it up, make any changes you need, and write your own firmware. Get your own path if you wanted to make something to that. And that's exactly what we're trying to do, make sure that someone didn't brick it accidentally.
Gotcha.
Yeah.